Welcome to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous deep dive here on Progress and Perfection with me, Eamon, and my buddy, John.
Remember that when you went to Copac?
No, did I miss out on this?
1, 2, 3. Welcome to Copac.
No, I have completely purged that memory.
What's your name?
Eamon.
Shut up! They don't let you say it. Then everybody's like, stand up, stand up. You stand, sit down! All right, so.
Here we go.
Freaking Silkworth. We can't get away from this.
Can't get away.
Can't get away from this.
We're almost done with him.
He's got a lot to say.
He's got a lot of opinions.
He's got a lot to say.
He restates it a few times.
Yeah, he does. He does. He's proud of himself. He's a doctor. What do you want?
I mean, he gave us a fairly comprehensive picture of different types of alcoholics last time.
Yep.
And we are now, we'll conclude it today. We'll knock out the last couple pages. I'll start. Bottom of XXX, page XXX in the 4th edition. All these, and this is right after all the types of alcoholics, all these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we're familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. Okay? How's this hold up, Mr. in the medical field?
Yeah,
bro?
First thing that strikes me is like the way he phrases it. They cannot start drinking. Mm-hmm. So it's not they cannot stop drinking.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I've got to think that there was some intentionality to that. Because they cannot stop drinking is almost like a duh. But like they cannot start drinking. I think that's an interesting way to put that. Mm-hmm. And what I think is interesting about that, like the craving piece, I think like that's kind of a no-brainer. We get that, and we'll talk about that more. But that idea of the allergy, I think a lot of people butt up against that. The idea that it's not willpower, you should just be able to stop.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? You should just be able to stop drinking. And then once you have stopped drinking, like, why can't you just drink normally?
Yeah. Either stay stopped or just be a normal drinker.
Yeah, or just drink like we all do.
Yeah.
And I think like it ties into that last sentence. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. Because like in the culture right now, there's that movement to it's like the tolerance movement. What's it called? It's got a name. It's zapping me right now. It's not tolerance, but it's this idea that like the idea shouldn't be abstinence. It should be like figuring out a way to do it successfully.
Just some sort of moderation.
Yeah. It's got a name. Hopefully it'll come to me.
Okay.
You guys out there, you all know what I'm talking about. It's been a long day. What do you want from me? But yeah, it's this movement now within sort of the mental health community that like abstinence is not the answer. The answer is like how can we help you do this in a way that is like more successful, and it applies both to drugs. That model is towards drugs, and it's also towards alcohol. And I think there's tons of books that have actually been written about that. As an option to AA, like, oh, you don't have to stop drinking. Follow these rules.
Do this instead.
Follow these rules, and you figure out how to be a moderate drinker. Drink successfully. And I mean, so like, I guess I've known a few people who've been able to do that. To where, they may have experienced, like we were talking last time, that idea of like binge drinking through college or like, problem drinking through college or through this phase, and then like they hit adulthood, and then they seemingly don't have the issue anymore, and they literally, it's like legit, they literally can have like a glass of wine with dinner once a month, and it's like just not a big deal for them. So I guess the question becomes like, are they alcoholics? Were they truly alcoholics?
Some of it becomes a semantic point. Because it's like, okay, well, perhaps they didn't cross whatever line someone who professes to be and remain an alcoholic crossed.
Right.
To where, okay, there's there's maybe the mental, or there maybe is not the mental craving, mental obsession, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
But there was a craving or a desire, or at least heavy drinking early on.
Right.
But that obsession didn't develop maybe to the extent that it's got to really latch on for life.
Yeah. I remembered it. Harm reduction.
Harm reduction.
Yeah, that's the new. That's the
thing now.
The newbie thing, right? And and they apply it to like opiate use and heroin. Like part of harm reduction includes like maintenance therapy. So like methadone is sort of in the harm reduction model. But yeah, there's lots of, like, it wasn't called harm reduction when these books first started coming out, but like, there's all kinds of alternatives to not drinking. But I agree with you. Like, yeah, maybe it truly wasn't alcoholic drinking like we know alcoholic drinking. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I know, like, I can't do that. Like, I can't moderate my alcohol content. I've proven that many times. Like, I can't do it. Can there be like a one-off or a two-off where I'm like, oh, I only had a few beers? Sure. But I also know, like, without a doubt, like, the only relief that I have is entire abstinence. Yeah. You know, I can't mess around with it.
Only relief, and I would add, like, for myself, the only safe harbor. Because I look at, you know, many, many years of entire abstinence. Right. And it's like, okay, sure. We all have those thoughts of, gosh, I was 19 years old the last time I did whatever. Right. To me, it's like, well, it's not really worth at this point testing the waters. It's not worth the potential downside. Is not worth the almost negligible upside to chase that wanting to control and enjoy drinking like a normal person.
Right, for sure.
And so it becomes a safe harbor for me of like, you know what? That's the only assurance that I have of staying safe. I might stay safe, drink a handful, be all right. You know, I've screwed up some relationships probably, some examples and standards I've set. But to what end, you know? Right.
Yeah, and I think like at this point, you know, it's such a lifestyle choice, you know, to not drink, that like to drink would create a whole new like lifestyle for me.
Yeah.
You know, to even do it successfully would mean like, oh, now I have wine in the house, or
things change.
Yeah, just like you were saying, like relationships begin to change, like dynamics begin to change, daily patterns and habits begin to change, occasions begin to change, how I experience occasion. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much of a healthy lifestyle that I live now, separate and apart from just like alcohol consumption, that it's hard to even find a place for it to be inserted into. Like, I don't know.
I'd have to make room for it.
Right.
Like, it would not only be a conscious choice to test the waters, but to X something out to include that.
For sure. Yeah, so yeah, like, I think, like, yeah, what we're hitting on there is, like, it's not just, like, abstinence in this one area. You know, it would have to, like, reincorporate itself into a whole new lifestyle and a whole new way of living to go back to it. And like you said, like, is that worth it? No. Like, no. I mean, mainly I'm sitting here thinking of the disrupted relationships piece. Like,
yeah, that's huge.
What the hell's my wife going to do?
And
you know what I mean?
You know, look at us. We've built up lives.
Right.
So we actually have stakes to where at some point along the line, maybe there weren't these stakes. Sure. Maybe the experimentation, I don't know that it ever would be a good thing, but it definitely wouldn't have had the stakes it does today.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I look at your face and it's like, this would be stupid to do.
Like what? Yeah, like what? Well, I'm just sitting here thinking,
and that's the same
like,
reaction I have.
Like, oh, what am I going to go home and tell my wife? Like, hey, great news, honey, bought a 6-pack.
We're all good.
We try the drinking thing again. Like, that just sounds bizarre. Like, I don't know. That just sounds.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm so distant from it at this point. It just seems like that would be a weird. I don't know how that would work. I don't know how you would incorporate that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's weird.
So this next paragraph maybe hits on this harm reduction thing, because he says, in his opinion, this immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed.
That's amazing.
Cheery language.
Yeah, that's hilarious. You know, that's, yeah. Remind me, what's the date of this?
So this is 39.
1939.
And his experience is probably the year and 5-6 years preceding.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know if that's still applied.
That's what I wonder.
That among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed.
Because there's definitely a lot more tools at their discretion and at their disposal. And like this harm reduction thing, I Googled it, looked at the Wikipedia, just scanned. It's like, oh, interesting. So now that at least this is a school, I don't know how big a school of thought that, okay, just let's see if we can keep them from killing themselves and reduce, I mean, it's in the name, reduce the amount of damage done rather than eliminate. It's like, okay, I get it. That's a sliding scale. I agree. I would rather, if it's going to be one or the other, death or not death, and death or not quite sobriety but alive and a chance. I'll take that every day.
Yeah, and I wonder where doomed is in the scale. Between death and life. Right. Is doomed over here by death. Because if that's true, like, I mean, I've seen people where the harm reduction thing does work. And it does keep them alive, and it does allow them to be successful husbands and fathers and businessmen and business owners. And so it does work. And so I don't quibble with that solution because it's workable for them. And it does keep them from being doomed. And not only that, it allows them to live a life that is, I mean, from what you can see anyway, it is a life that's flourishing. And so maybe that's a difference. Maybe that's the difference between alcohol and like opiates. Like maybe harm reduction doesn't work with alcohol. Maybe to his point, like maybe that is true. Like maybe the chronic alcoholic is in fact doomed if they continue in their alcoholism, as to where maybe the chronic opium addict has some hope.
Could vary substance to substance.
Yeah.
And with the doom piece, I mean, I think it is. I mean, I think they just didn't have solutions in this. So doom was death. Right. It's like, what are we going to do? Right. Whereas today, we can move folks along away from death's door, if not exactly into what we envision maybe as their best option. Yeah. I don't know.
That's it. It's interesting. That's all right.
All right. Top of the next page. What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. Having a good day. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and, deciding his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment a waste of effort, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. His alcoholic problem was so complex, his depression so great, that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology. There's the moral psychology again. And we doubted if even that would have any effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is as fine a specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. So 2 pretty stark cases, and we've seen them as well. I can't recount if I've ever seen one, and I want to know if you have, that pronounced, where it's like, I don't even recognize you anymore. I mean, I've definitely seen folks come off of the street and get clean, physically cleaned up, emotionally sanitized, and back into the world of the living.
Yeah. Well, so one thing I love here that I think is worth emphasizing is the statement that following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts get into this position in their use where they feel as though, like, that's part of the hopeless feeling, is like, I can't think anymore. Like, I've lost the capacity to reason, to think, to react. All of those things, the fear is like that stuff is gone and it's not going to come back. And I think, like, it's evidence, and he doesn't use the term. I think it may have been discovered after this, but the idea of neuroplasticity and your brain's ability to rebound and bounce back, even despite the sort of death of certain regions of your brain, that your brain is able to recover.
As a physical organ.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, like as a physical organ. And I think that's just, it's not the fancy word, but like that's kind of what he's describing there. And I think that's important, because like, if you feel as though you literally have caused yourself brain damage, then it does make the situation feel absolutely hopeless. Yeah. Like, what is there to recover for? Because I will never be able to get back what I've lost.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that's kind of important.
Well, that's the downward spiral that we get into, especially toward the end of our drinking, be that the bitter end or before we sober up. It's like, can't imagine, and it'll talk about it later in the book, can't imagine continuing, and equally cannot imagine stopping.
Right.
It's that jumping off point.
Right.
I'm just screwed if I do, screwed if I don't situation.
Yeah. It's the fear. It's the fear that manifests itself in that moment of, like, fear of becoming. What am I going to become? I'm going to become something either way to that point. This is the jumping off point. I'm going to become something whether I jump off or whether I don't. And I'm scared to death of both of those options. But you have to go somewhere.
Funny we choose the hell that we know.
Right.
Over something that we don't.
Yeah, for sure.
For so long.
For sure. Well, and so, like, I guess the question would be, like, why would I do that? Why would I choose the hell that I know? And I think that comes back to the addiction piece. Well, because I'm addicted. And I feel as though I don't have a choice but to jump into hell. Like, it's the physical compulsion to continue to chase the addiction, almost more than the choice that obviously, like, now you can see is clear, but in the moment, like, there's no choice. I feel as though I have no choice. I've got to go forward. But yeah, back to your original question, I'm trying to rack my brain. I mean, I've certainly seen people get, this sounds weird, but like be brighter. Like their affect becomes brighter. And I think in that, like, you can see sort of a transition, a physical transition. I've certainly seen people go from, like, being skeletons to, embracing sobriety and becoming, like, fit human beings. Yeah. I don't know that it's been, like, as unrecognizable as he's describing And I don't know if that's hyperbole that he's going after there.
Could be. And it could be, you see a snapshot as a doctor literally on a day.
True.
And then a year later, however much time had passed, I think it was 1 year, he said, another snapshot.
Right.
To whereas most of those that I've experienced, I've seen the gradual coming alive in real time.
Right.
It's like I don't see my kid's age, but, I look at a picture a year ago, it's like, oh, snap.
Yeah, right.
What happened?
Right. Well, so I think that's sort of revealing also. The doctor had no relationship with his clients. There was no community. There was no, there was no relationship. There was no closeness that's evident. And I think, as we know, one of the most healing aspects to the whole getting sober thing is the experience of community.
Right.
And that's kind of like, it's lost on him, because to your point, like I see a snapshot of him and then I see another snapshot of him. So to me, it's a whole different person, and what a shame that is, because he misses out on all the in between.
Yeah.
He misses out on the significance of this person becoming like a human being again. So yeah, I think that's kind of interesting that he loses that opportunity.
And also, too, that both him in the second example, he and his patient, whoever this one was, both, we doubted that even that would have any effect, in reference to this moral psychology. So, I mean, doctor and patient both are like, so hopeless, so complex of a problem, probably not even going to work. But then sort of the heart of, I think, this whole doctor's opinion is that, yes, he became sold on the ideas in the book, the steps, which my sponsor said was the answer to every question he was going to ask me, like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. It's like, it's the steps. Just do the stuff and see what happens. And in fact, I don't know if these were snapshots in that case, in that relationship, doctor-patient either, but it did in fact work.
Yeah.
I wonder if Silkworth was a man of faith or not.
Right. Well, it doesn't seem so. Because it doesn't seem that like he had much idea of what the future is. Like he wasn't very future oriented or hopeful for the future. And I mean, certainly this dude he was working with here wasn't either. He wasn't capable of seeing the future. That idea, like, in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. Like he can't see past the moment to see any good in the future. And I think you have to have a certain amount of like religion, spirituality, to believe that there is something in the future that's worth seeing.
That's where hope springs from, you think?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have to hope that something can change. And I mean, I think like, yeah, we're told in Alcoholics Anonymous to see one day at a time. But also I think it is a worthy opportunity to see the future and to at least like have something that you're aiming for to give you the meaning and to give you the purpose that you need to move towards it. If I can only see to the end of today, and I get it, like I understand that, but if I can only see to the end of the day, I don't have much meaning and purpose for the future. It's confined for this moment, for this day. And I think it's appropriate in early sobriety to latch on to that. But I think like as you begin to accumulate sober days, and everybody I work with, I always am like, all right, like, what are we aiming for? It doesn't have to be specific. It doesn't have to be a bullseye, but it can be like the large ring. Like, what are we aiming for and what are we moving towards? What's going to give you this meaning and what's going to give you this purpose? To your sponsor's point, it's answered in the steps in step number 12. So like, what's my meaning and what's my purpose as it pertains to the program? Well, it's to take this story that I've been given, that I've been blessed with, and to missionally give it back to other people,
Well, I think you even, in the saying, in the telling of just for today from one person to another, there's even a piece of forward-looking hope attached to that. Because if I, as a dude that's been around for a long time, am telling that to a newcomer, well, they're latching on to the one day at a time, one moment at a time to get through to get through the difficulty. But they're also looking at people like me and others like, well, yeah, I mean, and look at him. Look what could become. Look what I could become.
Right.
Maybe not one-to-one, but just there's a piece of hope. I got it definitely when people told me that in my first days and months and years. I was like, okay, I do want to keep leaning forward to that. I do. I don't know, to your point about the bullseye, I don't know exactly where I want to end up, but I don't want to go backwards. And I'm pretty sure standing still is a bad idea from everything that I'm getting told. And so it's like this purposeful leaning forward, taking it the only way we can, moment at a time.
And so maybe like, I'm just thinking of it as you're speaking, like maybe the broad bullseye is sobriety, and like the meaning and the purpose is like, I got to make it through today, and I'll worry about tomorrow, and then it's like I make it through tomorrow, and slowly but surely I'm taking steps towards that like broader goal of sobriety, and to the point of sort of these stories, like as you gain traction and as your brain begins to repair and as your affect lifts and you become brighter, you're capable of seeing that. You're seeing the rings inside the sobriety bullseye, and maybe that's like the forward progress, or like the forward looking part. The future orientation begins to crystallize at that point, still being mindful that like, yes, this is a daily process and this is a daily battle, and I've got to do the things I need to do to like dip my toe in sobriety on a daily basis to ensure that bullseye continues to be attainable.
And you know what the bad news is?
Come on.
It's not going to happen automatically. Or by osmosis. Or by, to expand what you just said, just dip my toes in. Like to get, what does he call it? Moral psychology, to get this crap to work. I mean, maybe some people can do less. I certainly haven't done it as hard as others, but I had to work for it.
Well, yeah, and I think you're right. Like, just to clarify that, if you're dipping your toe in expecting to get sober, you're not going to get sober. Right? Like, it's got to be a dive in at the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to have any hope of getting this thing, then like, you got to do the work, But I think, you would, as you move through the process and as you gain traction in sobriety, you can't just shuck off everything that you've learned and everything you've experienced and be like, oh, I got it. I ain't got to worry about it now because I did the steps and I've done this and I've done that, so I'm good now. And I think that's what I mean by like, you have to continually be dipping your toe into sobriety, whether that's contacting somebody, that's sober, whether that's attending a meeting, whether that's reading the big book, whether that's through prayer or meditation.
Grabbing all the little pieces.
Yeah, dude, it's that idea of
insulating ourselves with
that idea of spiritual fitness.
Yeah.
And ensuring that I'm fit to the task each day,
I like it.
I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray.
I also earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book. I wonder the stats on that today. Like, are people actually picking this up and reading it as much as? I hope so. I mean, certainly the people that I recommend, I think that they are the ones that actually are curious and want to dive into it.
Yeah.
It's like, especially, it's 164 pages before you get to the personal stories.
Right.
I mean, that is not a lot.
No.
These are big print words. I'd be curious on the word count. Somebody let us know the word count of that. But it's like, just freaking try it. At a certain point, you got to get to the end of yourself. And if you're not there, if the consequences aren't enough, well, I think we talked about that in another session too. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe there's Go try to maintain. Go try something else. But for the alcoholic, for the addict, for the person like at that point of I can't imagine drinking, using,
right,
and I can't imagine life without it. Like this really is a lifeline,
right,
and it's such a simple one too.
right,
Like,
right.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to get into all of it, but
look, it's evidence, man. People don't want to read it. People don't like to read anymore.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? They just want somebody to do it for them and give it to them so that I don't have to read all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, people don't want to read this. They don't want to. You know, and they've got all kinds of reasons not to. You know, and I think you told me about the poll that was sent out. Like, should we rewriting
the
something?
book? Yeah.
Again, like that's evidence that people aren't reading it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what do we have to do to appeal to the masses to make ourselves relevant again? Mm-hmm. You know, and I just think that's a damn shame. Yeah. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? The way it's presented, the way it's written, it's totally effective. Yeah. And there's no reason to dumb it down. There's no reason to, like, rewrite the thing. It's perfectly fine the way it is. People just need to freaking read it.
Yeah. Just get over yourself.
Right. It's not that hard. Like, it's words on a page, you know, like it's little symbols on a page that end up meaning something, you know. But I think like it speaks to like, and you can remember that, like it speaks to the desperateness of the person's condition. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're giving somebody the big book and they're like, I don't want to read it because it's got the wrong pronouns, then like that tells you everything you need to know about where they are in their journey to sobriety. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Cancel me. # cancel, whatever. I don't care. But like to me, it speaks volumes of where they are and how serious they are in pursuing getting better.
Yeah. Because
they're trying to like allow something that's frivolous to interfere with their ability to heal. And that just doesn't make sense to me.
Give me an excuse.
Right.
To not have to change.
Oh, they're bigots.
To do something easier.
Right. Like, what are you talking about? Like, these guys aren't bigots. They're freaking trying to help you. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, give me a break. Give me a break. You know, like you said, it's 164 pages. It's life-changing. It's 164 pages of life-changing symbols that are they're nothing but good. And they're not bad.
Some of them are actually well written too. Like since we talked, that was about a month ago. Mm-hmm. I think I've changed my stance a little bit on it because initially I was like, oh yeah, couldn't hurt anything. Mm-hmm. And then I think the very next week I brought it up to a couple buddies in recovery, and we had a meeting and we read something out of the big book, and one of the remarks was like, man, that would just kill me if they changed that because it's so whatever passage we read was just like so impactful and good and true and right.
Did you ever scoff at it?
Scoff at the book, at the stuff.
Yeah, this whole book,
though he came to scoff or whatever, he may remain to pray. Yeah.
Yeah. Though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain.
My first trip into AA, like my first introduction to AA, was here at Cornerstone before I went down to Pakistan, and I did the 30-day, 28-day treatment thing. Went to my first meeting. I thought AA was an insurance company before that. Like I had no idea what any of this stuff was. Yeah. I got this literally. You can tell this very book. And I wonder how much I read. I didn't read all of it. I scanned through it. I looked at the steps. And my thoughts were, I grew up as a Presbyterian. I know the Bible reasonably well. I recognize the principles here. I mean, they're not shy about it. I mean, they took many things from places in the Bible. This seems stupid. And furthermore, let me just read these steps and check. I'm good. Yeah. And so my scoffing was one of completely minimizing the amount of absolute shit that I had gotten into still, despite the fact of where I had at that point wound up, and thinking that I could think my way out of trouble. And I wasn't like you, and I wasn't like, God forbid, I was like any of these people in these AA meetings. Interesting stories, nice people, but get me out of here. Right.
These people are morons.
Yeah. How would you let your life deteriorate to that? Right. I'm a kid. and thanks for the info.
Mm-hmm.
No way I'm going to go back and do anything
Yeah.
like that now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how long did it take me?
Yeah. Right.
60 days.
Right.
Right
Right.
back.
Yeah.
Same pattern.
Yeah. Glad it worked for you.
Yeah.
Way to go. Glad that worked for you. But I'm fine.
I'm okay.
I'll be fine. I got it. There you go. Step 1. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Right on. I worked the steps.
Yeah.
I've worked them before. I worked them at church. Like whatever the reasoning is there. I certainly scoffed. I mean, I thought I scoffed until I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I scoffed until like there I was on death's door. Then like none of it was funny anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Did I still have doubts and hesitancies and my own biases? For sure. But I didn't scoff anymore. But yeah, certainly leading up to that point, it was like, rehab's for freaking quitters. You guys are pussies. Like, this is never going to work.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are morons. Like, drugs are awesome. What's your problem?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong here. Everything's fine. Like, you guys are idiots. If that's what you guys need, then, like, you guys are losers. But then when it got serious, it got serious. And I didn't scoff. I think I probably minimized.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I scoffed.
Mm-hmm.
I think I probably minimized a lot of it as like, there's no way that works, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, my attitude drastically changed when I went down to Copac.
Mm-hmm.
I approached my parents at that time for help. It's like, okay, yeah.
Right.
And it didn't take long either.
Right.
It was
Right.
30, 60 days out of treatment here that I started screwing up again.
Yeah.
And then not that, I'm a baby.
Yeah.
I was a baby then, and I still am. Me and pain just don't work out well together.
I've seen you on the trail.
For very long.
I didn't say anything. I love you, man. You're fine.
But when it got to that point
Mm-hmm.
where it got real, it was like, okay.
Right.
And, sure, for into recovery, I still had turning my nose up at stuff here and there.
Yeah.
But I never really backed down from the fact that, yeah, this is serious. I do need help.
Yes.
And I can't solve
Correct.
whatever's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Call it what you want.
Yeah.
Call the solution what you want.
Right.
I need something different.
Yeah. I need some help.
Yeah.
I can remember that.
That's such an important point.
Yeah. Yeah. So can people recover without AA?
Sure.
Can they recover without treatment?
Sure. I mean, we don't have a monopoly on any of this.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people cannot
Mm-hmm.
recover without one or both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I could have at that time in my life and my circumstance. I mean, those were both godsends for me. And sometimes I look at, I've been going to AA for 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that, I'm like, gee whiz.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours days have I spent in meetings? And,
Right.
you can certainly look at that in a negative sunk cost way, or you can look at the relationships formed, the lives saved, the positive type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I remember really turning my nose up at people who would say, well, I'm not doing AA anymore. I found, the ones that would go back to Pine Lake and, found Jesus again and just 100% all in. AA is kind of bad,
Mm-hmm.
and
Why would you turn your nose up at them?
because I was at that point much more along the lines of, wait a second, you got sober here and now you're just going to leave future people that need insight and need help, to me, and the people that aren't leaving AA. So I, whatever. I hope that they are fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that they probably were.
Yeah.
That avenue is certainly
Sure.
more attractive, more open, more whatever for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessary to stay in AA or to only use this or solely use this.
Right. Right.
To me, though, it's like both and, not either or.
Yeah. 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 Like, so when I was working, when I was the director of the IOP program, I can remember we were having group one night, and this guy came in, and he was like, he told this story. He was like, man, he'd been drinking for 17 years. He said, I was listening to K-Love tonight before I got here. And, they have these little testimonials sometimes between songs. And he said the testimonial, somebody called in and they said, I'd been drinking, I don't know, pick a number, like 12 years and just couldn't stop. And I tried this and I tried that and I tried AA and I tried rehab. And I finally got on my knees and I prayed to God that he would take away this desire for me to drink. And that night was whatever the day was, and I haven't had a drink since. And this guy looked at me and he said, that's the most discouraging thing I've ever heard. Because I've been praying every day for 10 years that the Lord would take this burden off of my shoulders. And he hasn't done it. And I think to your point, like, sometimes that solution, although hopefully it's genuine, sometimes that solution can be so heartbreaking for the rest of us.
Yeah.
To me, the beauty of my whole entire experience of like rehab and step work was how it brought me into like proper relationship with the Lord and allowed the Lord to heal me. It wasn't this just like instantaneous, like, sort of thing that was gone. And in fact, like I'll tell this to people all the time, the only conversion story there is in the Bible where it happens, there's only one, and that was Paul. Everybody else, like even the Thomas was still like, dude, I don't believe you. There's Jesus in front of me. He's like, bet, son, I rose from the dead. And Thomas is like, nah, dog. Like, I don't believe it. Let me put my finger through your hand. Yeah. And he's like, bet. Only then did he believe. So, like, can that happen? To your point, can that happen? Sure, it can. But the damage of having that be presented as the option, I think, can be so discouraging for so many people. I'm not ashamed to say, like, I found the Lord through Alcoholics Anonymous. It was a beautiful process. I've grown since for sure, but like I found him in that. I found like the forgiveness in that. I found the repentance in that. I found the community in that. I found the mission. Step 12, I found the mission and the reason and the purpose and the meaning for my life in that. Like literally, that's what I do for a living now. Yeah. Man, that's how I found the Lord, was through the trial of working through all of that stuff. God bless the guy that, look, if you're out there and that thing's happened to you, like, God bless you, man.
For sure.
I think that's, praise the Lord for miracles, because, like, they're all around us. And I think that's an awesome story. But, like, don't let that story interfere with the other guy's story that the Lord has for him. I guess that'd be my thing.
Yeah. No, and I 100% agree. And, have you read recently the spiritual appendix in the back? Appendix 2, it's on spiritual experience. It's great. It's on like page 500 and whatever. But it's 2 pages basically saying, hey, we kind of led some people to believe that you have to have a bright light experience to encounter God and to get a God and no, right. Like most of our members have one of the educational variety, where it is like suiting up, showing up one day at a time with hope for the future, like concertedly putting in the very practical work of AA, the step work of AA, which my story is very similar. Like I refound my relationship with Christ through AA, kind of purposefully walking away from him for a minute in my early AA days. I don't know how you rate all that, but just doing AA, and found my way back to this is the stuff I was raised with. Like here's the spiritual principles, really practically being lived out, and it gave me a model to live one day at a time by, which I grew up with, but I just didn't connect those dots. at that time. And I began drinking right about the time, in high school when my brain was, starting to put things together. I was really coming into opinions and stuff. And yeah, definitely found him through AA. Refound, if you will.
Right.
I have a friend that says he was born again. And I've always liked that imagery.
Yeah, that's neat. All right, dude. Next time we'll dive in, I guess.
That's it.
Chapter 1.